Breeze topic number one tonight is after our convo last week that science either has different lens across different cultures or that quote unquote science could be a European, shout out to gas, is Marxism scientific? Is Marxism universal? I think I saw Oinch talking about this on Twitter recently too. This came with a link though. Let's check out the link. Let's check out the link. Let me share my screen. I guess that'll be useful, right? Let me share my screen. Here we go. So this takes us to a tweet. And in the tweet is from Black as in Revolution. Black as in Revolution. The tweet starts with a quote, "We must be clear here and not confused. I'm a socialist." Oh, I know this speech. Yeah, I know this. Kwame Ture's stunning response to a black man who said he can't get with socialism because it's a quote-unquote white thing. Karl Marx did not invent socialism. So and they got this from Afro-Marxists on YouTube, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that channel. So this came with this link. Bonnie, want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Must be clear here and not confused. I'm a socialist. Must be clear here and not confused. I'm a socialist. One other thing I must tell you now. They confuse people about socialism. Brother the other day said, "Why ain't no socialist?" I said, "Why not, brother?" He said, "Because it's a white thing." I said, "Oh, really?" You see, Europe tries to make believe that everything that comes out of the world comes out of Europe. I told the man, I said, "Socialism ain't no white thing." He said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Karl Marx discovered it." I told him, Karl Marx never discovered socialism. He cannot. You call the laws of gravity Newton's laws. I'm sure there's a mnemonic device to help you on your quizzes. But you certainly cannot believe that Isaac Newton can found that a body falls at the rate of 32 feet per second squared per second squared. He can't find this. He can't discover it. He cannot invent this. He can only observe it and record it, discover the law. If I'm sitting in Timbuktu in Africa and I've never heard of Sir Isaac Newton and I'm conducting any experiments with gravity, I will come to the same conclusion that he does. A body in motion tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force. He cannot invent this. He can only observe it and record it. Karl Marx did not invent socialism. If I'm sitting in Libya in the desert and I'm doing any research with capital and labor without ever having heard of Karl Marx, I will come to the same conclusion that he did. That anytime capital seeks to dominate labor, there'll be a ruthless, uncompromising struggle on the part of labor until it comes to crush capital and dominate it. This is a fact. My history demonstrates that. We came here as chattel slaves for centuries. We fought and fought and fought until we crushed it. Now we're just slave of the wage, and now we've got to rise up and crush that one. That's to declare that Karl Marx didn't invent socialism. It's there for all to see. Karl Marx's great contribution to the world was in the area of historical materialism and dialectical materialism, something you need to know if you know about socialism. But since you don't know about socialism, you don't even know the words. And not only does the enemy keep you ignorant, you stay ignorant. You won't ever go read a book about socialism. Why read a book about socialism? They already told me in my class it ain't no good. You will not even read a book about socialism. Why, you don't even read a book about your history. We come to inspire you to learn. We come to tell you that when you come to serve a people, you must know as much as you can. The more you know, the
Yeah, I want y'all to bear with me. I like to play these clips like twice. I think it's on the one hand, I think our esteemed brother from Trinidad here is making some good points, but I think there's one flaw in his thinking. Let's watch it one more time, and then we'll discuss it. All right, and hopefully by that time more people will join the panel, besides me and just one. All right.
must be clear here and not confused. I'm a socialist. One other thing I must tell you now. They confuse people about socialism. Brother the other day said, "Why ain't no socialist?" I said, "Why not, brother?" He said, "Because it's a white thing." I said, "Oh, really?" You see, Europe tries to make believe that everything that comes out of the world comes out of Europe. I told the man, I said, "Socialism ain't no white thing." He said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Karl Marx discovered it." I told him, Karl Marx never discovered socialism. He cannot. You call the laws of gravity Newton's laws. I'm sure there's a mnemonic device to help you on your quizzes. But you certainly cannot believe that Isaac Newton can found that a body falls at the rate of 32 feet per second squared per second squared. He can't find this. He can't discover it. He cannot invent this. He can only observe it and record it, discover the law. If I'm sitting in Timbuktu in Africa and I've never heard of Sir Isaac Newton and I'm conducting any experiments with gravity, I will come to the same conclusion that he does. A body in motion tends to stay in motion unless stopped by an outside force. He cannot invent this. He can only observe it and record it. Karl Marx did not invent socialism. If I'm sitting in Libya in the deserts and I'm doing any research with capital and labor without ever having heard of Karl Marx, I will come to the same conclusion that he did. That anytime capital seeks to dominate labor, there'll be a ruthless, uncompromising struggle on the part of labor until it comes to crush capital and dominate it. This is a fact. My history demonstrates that. We came here as chattel slaves for centuries. We fought and fought and fought until we crushed it. Now we're just slave of the wage, and now we've got to rise up and crush that one. That's to declare that Karl Marx didn't invent socialism. It's there for all to see. Karl Marx's great contribution to the world was in the area of historical materialism and dialectical materialism, something you need to know if you know about socialism. But since you don't know about socialism, you don't even know the words. And not only does the enemy keep you ignorant, you stay ignorant. You won't ever go read a book about socialism. Why read a book about socialism? They already told me in my class it ain't no good. You will not even read a book about socialism. Why, you don't even read a book about your history. We come to inspire you to learn. We come to tell you that when you come to serve a people, you must know as much as you can. The more you know, the
Yeah, one of the things he says there, one of the things he says there that is interesting, that puts a fire under me a little bit too, is like I'm familiar with all of these economic ideas, right? But I personally haven't put that serious study into what economic idea would be best for us in our situation. And that's something that I hope that these conversations light that fire under me a little bit more, to really study it more like how Oni has studied it, to kind of get on that level with it. I'm familiar with them, but to say I've really sat down and applied it and seen the pros and cons, I haven't. So that's one thing. I think we really do need to study it. Oni just said in the chat he might do how Europe, I guess, underdeveloped Africa in his on his podcast. Don't forget, Carl Hezekiah and I reviewed that book as well. You guys could check that out and subscribe to Oni's channel, The Pro Black Perspective, for updates on as to when he gets to that as well. And I know we got Nama X who's more leaning socialist, I guess. I think one of the things with these people, before I throw it to Buana, the rabid capitalist on the panel here, I'm kidding. But before I throw it to Buana, I think one of the things that gets me is that, again, I've talked about it several times. Why don't we embrace the things that we had? And why is it that, you know, it would seem to me that our brother Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael here, he resonates with the African tradition of communalism, Ubuntu and all that, Ujama and all that kind of thing. But for whatever reason, I guess because Marxist has more of a scientific approach, guys tend to lean that way as opposed to leaning, you know, what we did, right? But anyway, without further ado, let's hear from Buana on this. Buana, what say you to all this?
I thought I would expect that, you know, to have my socialist brothers come running to answer these kinds of questions. You know, I would expect Carl Hezekiah, he should have been up here, you know, and all my other left-leaning brethren, because they know I tend to have a slant towards capitalism. as opposed to Marxism. I have, and unlike what he has said, I have read conscientism. I can't remember if I'm pronouncing that the name of the title of that book correctly, by
Conscientious. Conscientious.
conscientism. Yeah, a long time ago by Nkrumah. I've read Ojama by Nyerere. I've listened to several of his speeches, as well as I've read Walter Rodney's work, Groundings with My Brothers, and how Europe developed underdeveloped Africa. I've listened to people like Maurice Bishop them, and although a lot of their ideas, they did garner a lot of their ideas from Europe. No, let me say this though. Let me add something to that as well, because he would have said that he taught in terms of talking about Marxism, and then he talking about the great man Lenin, one of his speeches. It's not to dismiss that historically, Africa did practice or what people would label as Marxism, or in terms of communalism in their societies. And I have no issues with that. If that's what they wanted to practice and they decided collectively to practice that, who am I to say that that is wrong? But from what I have seen in going to places like Cuba and going to places like Canada, where the economy has a slant towards socialism, I see when these theoretical things hit the ground itself, for me, it just started to look problematic. It's problematic. That's one issue I have. The other issue, and I stated this before on the platform, because the Marxists and people who are left leaning say all people are equal, but it's just some people are more equal than others. Because when you look at it, Fidel Castro, for all his rights and all his wrongs, he was a very wealthy person, landowner, and he was living way beyond the realities of the citizens who he governed over. Some people are more equal than others. When I see this particular individual having his own keys around the country of Cuba, private keys, islands, and shit like that, I look at it and say, well, I guess under this theoretical discourse, some people are more equal than others. So my problem ain't with the theoreticians, because the theoreticians always debate, always discuss, always go into these back and forths. But when the rubber meets the road, when you see the actual practice, this is when the waters become muddy. So I need someone to really come and give me some understanding of why is that occurring in these particular areas. And when the brother says that Cuba is a communism and socialism, for me, one is just one step down from another. One is just one step down from another, if you really ask me. But my issue is, well, the economy, the Canadian economy, when you look at the healthcare system, is completely socialized. But that's neither here nor there. What I would say is that when I see the practice of these theoretical ideas and what is best for me in particular, I am leading towards the ideas of Friedman, Milton Friedman. Them, I am leaning towards that. I kind of like Ayn Rand when she goes on to her theoretical discussions. The what she talks about. She talks about the virtue of selfishness. I tend to lean towards that capitalistic end of things. So I think for this particular prompt, I would really rather hear from the lens of my socialistically inclined brethren, because they would do a much fairer assessment of this particular prompt than I could ever do it.
I'll echo those thoughts too, and I'll say this. Like I said, it puts a fire under me to really study this stuff. I'm going to read some of the comments that actually struck me in the chat right now. But what I'll say is this, and someone new was here earlier. I'll read their comments in a second. But they said something about, it's time to stop reading and start doing. That's true for the people who have read. There's some people who haven't read anything. It's time for them to start reading, for sure. And it's time for us who did the reading to start doing, right? I'll say this: dissimilar to Buana, right? Who we know is a capitalist pig. Dissimilar to Buana. I believe that I believe that we can't look at bad actors who are using these concepts. Like you're right. Like Castro and them shouldn't be owning massive amounts of land and keys and all this old shit. Especially if there are people who are struggling mightily to cover the basic needs for themselves and their families within his country. That's my biggest thing. My biggest thing is, man, there should not be suffering because there's a mofo or two hoarding the resources. And that's really what this capitalist imperialism to me is. It's a few people hoarding shit, right? That then creates this scarcity, that then creates this markup in pricing. So people are under this price gouging type thing and hard to make ends meet. I believe that everyone should be able to make their ends meet, man. And you can still have extra if you worked for the extra, if you use your ingenuity or whatever it is, right? That's my issue. And I think that's a system that we should, at least in the beginning, should be trying to achieve. A system where we don't just leave people to be crushed. We don't leave people to be crushed because 5 people own 95% of everything. Like, that's nonsense to me, right? But I'll be happy to hear from you guys in the chat. Now, I'll throw it back to Buana before we move on. And again,
I agree with you, Coco. I am not into monopolies. I don't think that no society should be running monopolies. This is why I like when America puts restrictions where people, well, selective restrictions, let me put it like that. When people try to run monopolies in their society, where a few people only are able to enter a particular industry, I am completely against that. Once I am able to create a better mousetrap, I am supposed to be able to put that mousetrap onto the market, whatever service or product that I have, and charge the price that I wish to charge. That's the free market. That's just me. Yeah. But when you try to where in terms of where you have these little oligarchies and monopolies that exist within societies, and no one could get into that industry, or the way of getting into that industry, the barrier of getting into that industry is so high, then you create monopolies. And I think that is unfair as well. But in terms of regular people, when it comes to the social welfare of people, I think that and I stated this before on the show, whereas young children who are the most vulnerable people, or the elderly, the people who would have worked in our society and contributed to our society, these people should be taken care of. You shouldn't neglect them. But when you're talking about people who are of age, who can work and choose not to, and I still have to reach into my pocket and provide in terms of care and facilitating that these people should be provided for and taken care of, then we have an issue. I have an issue. This is the reason why I want my socialist brethren to come on and just let's have a conversation.
No, I feel
don't be keyboard warriors. Don't be keyboard warriors. Come on and let's have the conversation.
Yeah, I feel you, but this would have been a good time for folks to come on and talk about it. But I do believe we need to have. I mean, we could continue these discussions on Shoot the Breeze, no problem. But we are limited by time a little bit. I do believe we need to have, like, by the way, join the Discord. On the Discord, we can have these discussions and fully flesh out this idea. I look forward to when Oni tackles how Europe underdeveloped. No, I think he was talking about a different book, actually. But I look forward to when Oni tackles it. Oni is a deep brother who will study the economics thing. Trigger Happy them seem to be into this conversation and deep about it. I wish all of us could get together at another time and have, and fully flesh out these ideas and come to good understandings. Bonnie, you mentioned something just now, before I get to the chat. You mentioned something just now that is the hardest part for me to reconcile my thoughts around, right? Yeah, you can't just sit your ass down all day. No, brother, you can't just sit down all day and I have to reach into my pocket to bail you out because you just refuse. Because then what happens is more and more people will start doing it. And then we'll end up in these situations where no one ain't want to do nothing, right? And everyone eating just like me, eating just like you, and we are contributors and high value contributors to the society. And that's the thing that we have to reconcile with our traditional African notions, the idea that you look out for everyone. I am because we are or you are. That's the hard part. That's the difficult thing, because if you don't do it, go ahead, Bonner.
No, I don't want to interrupt you, Kuku. What is the incentive? What is the incentive? If I am innovating something which you will benefit from, and you are taking half of my taxes, sometimes even more, to tell me to put into other situations in terms of feeding, providing, taking care of for grown people who could actually try to do for themselves, then I can say, man, what's the incentive for even getting up in the morning? I want if my lot will be the same lot with the person who does nothing, not even thinking, because that's an exercise in itself. And if I'm sitting down trying to come up with things not only to improve my personal situation, but improve society, on a greater basis, I should be able to be rewarded for that. What I mean? Not like and more so than the next man who chooses not even to do any of that. So, like I say, the socialist brethren needs to come on, and we need to have the discussion.
Yeah. There is something in there that has to be tackled. I do agree on that. In the chat, Trigger Happy 262 says, man, these Marxists on Twitter have been funny these past few days. On one hand, Marxism isn't European because it evolved past Europe. Yet, you have to make Marxism palatable for you in your situation. Trigger Happy, on the Discord, just hit me up and remind me what your handle is on Twitter. I've forgotten that now, what it is, because it might have been you who was posting some of that stuff, and I've just forgotten. Afro Native World is here. Afro Native World says, what's y'all's favorite book written by a black Marxist? Pro-black perspective. That's only, he says, Ujamaa, but it's not very Marxist, or conscientism, though not very Marxist either. But they are kind of socialism, aren't they? Go ahead, Bonner.
No, I was just answering this question. My favorite book written by a black Marxist is The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James.
Okay. I read, in fact, that was the next book Carl and I was going to do on the book club, if I remember correctly, before we had to take a hiatus on that. Brandon is new here, I think. Brandon Charles Jimenez. He says, favorite book? We read enough. Need more action, less reading. It was all thought of before, but not fully stood on before. I agree with you, Brandon. Like I said, there's some people who need to read. So you might have read.
No. I completely disagree with that. I think that we do little to no reading, and we don't have a reading culture. And if we was to say we had a reading culture, we have a fiction-oriented reading culture. We read about novels, things that doesn't necessarily benefit our community. If we had a reading culture, every time, if you go to any bookstore, throughout the United States or even here, but not, you see the faces that who culminate in these areas. Usually you see a lot of white faces. You don't see a whole lot of black faces. And when you listen to the social media, you would hear that there is a lack of a lot of reading. When you hear these people profess different kinds of things, you say, oh, this person can't think this. Didn't he read this? Didn't he read this? Historically, we are extremely illiterate. Scientifically, a lot of us are still illiterate. Mathematically, we're still illiterate. We need to do that. We don't have a culture of reading, and that's something we must get into. Because when you perfect the mind, when you develop the mind, the actions will follow, I believe.
I like that point, Guana. Trigger Happy 262 says, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. I need to reread it, though, at Afro Native World. Affirmative World says, I think I'm going to give it to Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Pro-Black Perspective says, I think Walter, the only Black Marxist I can think of, or Franz Fanon. The rest seem like socialists. Yeah. Brandon says we need more people standing on stuff. Yeah, Tariq Nasheed kind of highlights that too. It's the second time I mentioned him tonight. But a lot of the Black folks who are conscious, if you really peep it and you peep what they talk about, the words that they say, you know who their ideological father is, so to speak. And it's really people listening to others who might have read a book, and they're repeating what others who might have read a book are saying. And that's problematic for sure. Pro-Black only says Walter has a new book, Decolonial Marxism. The premise is Marxism is too wide. Is that right? Interesting. Okay. He says the Marxists think it proves the opposite. Trigabi 262 says decolonial Marxism sounds like decolonial Christianity to me. Affirmative World says John Henry Clark was a socialist that called Marx Johnny Come Lately. Interesting. Trick Happy says he'll tune in to only when he does the reading. Affirmative World says we got to blame the Trinis for Black Marxism. He's just joking, he says. We have to blame the Trinis for Black Marxism, because that's what Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture is here, a Black Marxist. Nama X says he's like a 100,000% socialist. Only starts to break down some of the definitions. And like I said, we should do a show from the bottom up, where we break down, we make it simple. I think that's what throws a lot of people too. In fact, I know that's what throws people. Because let me tell you, my father is like a socialist, and I come from like a socialist leaning family, right? And one of the things I noticed, I was a kid at the time, but when you start talking about proletariat and the bourgeoisie, a lot of people get lost in that shit. I think we need to do something very rudimentary and then build up the complexities of it. We should do that live on a live stream one day, or on the Discord. Oni says socialism is transitory state. What's up? Forecast says what's up. Peace to Forecast. Make sure you guys check out Forecast show. Forecast had a heated show the other night, man. You guys check out the playback on that. Trick Happy says, well, Marxists make the argument that anyone is a Marxist if they're applying quote unquote African communalism under industrialism, which he disagrees with. Oni says we need an advanced capitalist system. Trick Happy says, honestly, this is another problem I have with Black Marxists. You say that you are making this new thing, but you still cling on to trying to be Marxist by the book. Otherwise, you are a quote-unquote revisionist. All right. There was other comments in there. Nama X said Canada is the illusion of socialism. Real Black Gentleman was in the chat. He says, if you have a capital city, you're a capitalist, period. And there's other comments. I see Jay Bronze is out there saying, greetings, fam. Greetings to Jay. I didn't realize Jay had a channel until last night. You guys check out Jay's channel. By that I mean, but he was actually doing shows and stuff. I didn't realize that, Jay. Him and Tanzan had a show last night. You guys check that out. Check out his channel, subscribe, etc., etc. Yeah, there was a lot of comments. I can't get to all of them. In the meantime, let me welcome in Real Black Gentleman RBG. How are you this week?
Yeah, I'm straight.
Good. So you heard the all of this conversation.
Yes, I did. Even when Kwame Ture spoke. I mean, again, I think the terms are not concrete by nature. It's not like, I had said, people make arguments about exploitation of people as capitalists do, but socialists also exploit poor people. It's the nature of how, again, when we're talking about, when we say a term, you gotta bring it down to earth. They're talking about socialists. We're people who are concerned with society or societies. I don't think there's, if a socialist is trying to conform societies into one society, he's a capitalist. I think, socialists are forms of capitalists and vice versa. and as far as Marxism, oh geez, I don't have any time for that. I have a real blind spot for Marxism. I'll see a black person talking about Marxism, and I kind of zone out. I don't think it works. It's an aspect that gets overinflated. I mean, I don't even need to deal with Karl Marx to even understand what he's talking about with capital and stuff. A lot of that can just be, I mean, and even within various African, territories or geographies or whatnot, places, you know what I'm saying, where various peoples are. I mean, we know how peoples engage with each other and how things are added value. I mean, I just think that it's a false dichotomy. I don't think that they're opposite or polar in any way. I think capitalism and socialism can complement each other if you have any sense about it. And I just think that, again, like I said, both socialists and capitalists can both exploit poor people. It's the nature of the accumulation of wealth, whereas in society, it becomes the accumulation of clout and attention. That's what I believe.
I appreciate that, real black gentleman. Sister Raw's in the chat saying greetings. Shout out to Sister Raw. Afro Native World says word, socialism in Bahamas too. Yep. There was a socialist party and everything at one time. With that said, let's welcome in our brother Oni. Oni, how are you doing this week?
I'm cool. Peace. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Good to see you. Oni, quickly, if you had to lean in a direction, capitalist or socialist?
Shit. Well, I mean, you said capitalist or socialist? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think one of the issues that we have, and that's why I'm saying, like, I actually got to say that I don't know if we can have a conversation on Marxism because I feel like most people don't understand Marxism, Like, most Marxists don't understand Marxism. And that's, like, I'm realizing that more and more. You said what?
Only what is it that they're not understanding about Marxism?
Okay, so Marxism. So this is the thing that people don't get. Marxism was, like commentary is saying, if you just look at what's going on, you can speculate on like what's to come, right? And so Marxism is like that story of that that black guy who was trying to, I don't know if his name is John Henry, I think. But he's like a black guy who's trying to like beat a railroad and building it.
John Henry.
Yeah. So it's really about how human labor is going to become obsolete, right? If the capitalists keep it up, and this is something interesting because there's this other Jewish guy, I can't remember his name, like Yala, I don't know what his name is, but he's pretty famous. He wrote like Humankind or something like that. I don't know, but he gets paid big money by these white boys right now to go around and say what's going to happen when human labor becomes obsolete. Like if your economy becomes so advanced that you no longer need humans, what's going to happen to the vast majority of workers, right? And so Marxism is an attempt at, if you have an economy where humans are being replaced, right? It's a way to make those humans not be like starved to death, right? So that's the premise, you know what I mean? So he's at the time where he's like, oh, mechanization is replacing humans, and like today we're like, oh, AI is replacing humans, right? And so what do you do when you have a bunch of useless people? So there's this white boy who gets paid big money to ask that question, but that's the question that Marx was asking. And so the idea is that before the bourgeoisie say, hey, these workers are unnecessary, the workers should take over the industries of the bourgeoisie and then make it so that, like the AI can just feed everybody and all that kind of stuff. So like when you were like earlier, when you were like, can humans, like, I don't want somebody not working, right? In Marxism, the idea is that you will have computers work for you. You get what I'm saying? Like kind of like the Jetsons or some shit. You know what I mean? Where it's like I don't know if the Jetsons worked or not, but it's like that's what it is. So it's really like a utopia. It's really like science fiction. And I don't think it's a serious economic conversation to have, and I think that if you whereas Europe can make an argument of, well, what are we going to do if artificial intelligence does replace human labor? Like Africa's nowhere near that right now. And like we have more important things to important things to worry about. Like, sure, if we develop a system where artificial intelligence makes it so that you don't have to work, that's one thing, but we don't even we don't even make computers at this point. You know what I mean? like it's just not really in our scope. And so that's what I think is one of the reasons why it doesn't even make any sense for us to be having that conversation. Kind of like it doesn't make sense for us to have the conversation of what are we going to do with artificial intelligence? You know, like what are you going to do with your artificial intelligence? You know, what are you going to do with your robots' rights or something? Like it doesn't make any sense if you're not building robots. The same with Marxism is like, what will happen if your capitalist state develops to such a point where the proletariat become useless? You know what I mean? But we don't have that. So it's like putting the apple before the horse. I hope that makes sense.
No, I get it. I liked it. Does anyone on the panel want to comment what Oni just said before I go back to Oni? All right, Oni, can you speak to the prompt?
Oni is the ultimate capitalist. I mean, he goes to Tanzania and he finds the best prices. You know, so
yeah, boy. All right.
Yeah, boy. Oni all day. Anyway, Oni, after should be topic number one, after our convo last week, that science either has different lenses across different cultures, or that quote unquote science could be a European thing. Is Marxism scientific? Is Marxism universal? Now you just spoke to the sci-fi of it in a sense, right? But is there anything? First of all, is Marxism European? Can it be applied to other lenses, to other people groups?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I want to read that How Europe Will Develop Africa, because if you just search proletariat in that document, Walter Rodney will tell you, hey, you know what? Marx is telling us about how there's an antagonistic class between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. And he's like, there isn't that class division in Africa. You know, you don't have that extreme class division. What's more, you don't even have a developed bourgeoisie. You know, you have, exploiters, you have, people siphoning wealth. You don't really have bourgeoisie. You get what I'm saying? Like, you don't have people building up their own, having their own industries and, whatever. So it's like, Walter.
Oni, sorry, not to cut your wisdom, but just to be clear, when Walter was talking about that, he was talking about pre-colonial, traditional Africa, correct? He was saying that there was no class struggle in Africa before the European came along.
Well, I mean, I think he was talking about, obviously, that, I think pre-colonial was included, but I think he was even talking about up until the colonial period, Africa didn't really have bourgeoisie. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Africa didn't have, like Rockefeller and Ford or whatever. Right. It just had, stooges, the three stooges, you know what I'm saying? So that's another thing. And even today, maybe you do have Dangote, maybe you do have, a handful of people, but it's not to that large extent. And it's also not to say that they have that class division like what Marx would have been observing in Europe. You don't have that sort of antagonism. You don't have that sort of, I'm not going to give you shit, like what Europeans were doing. Like the viciousness of the European is just something that the European was doing. Like I think I can't remember what I was reading. No, I think it was maybe Forecast was reading it, but somebody was reading something where these white boys was working. This white man is talking about how his daughter was in his factory at 9 years old working for 18 hours. That shit don't even make any sense. There's no African on the planet that thinks working your own damn daughter your own damn daughter. And then I think he fired her after she lost a limb, she lost a finger while working. And he's like, yeah, and it's his own daughter. That kind of mentality, that's what Marx is observing, right? That's not even a thing in Africa. So the whole human rights thing, yeah.
The European was notorious for that shit. This is where child labor laws and all this shit came up. Up until not that long ago, 9 and 10-year-old kids was dying in coal mines and all kind of shit like that. They're notorious for that. But go ahead, Oni.
No, but that's what it is though, because it's even though African people had been mining diamonds and shit, gold for we wasn't doing no child labor shit. That's what this white boy's doing. So I would even say that because Marx is looking at white folk, he's missing the fact that his people are psychopaths. You know what I'm saying? He's missing the point that his people are vicious and villainous. And so it's not really a science. as much as maybe he's observing things in Europe and he's like, well, I think we need to kill these people in charge, right? But like anybody could, like the Haitian Revolution was the same thing. It's like you saw there was a bunch of vicious people, and you were like, I think we got to kill the people in charge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I don't think that. I think people give Marx too much credit, and I think some people, like personally, I think a lot of people turn that socialist route because of how people give too much credit. Like people forget that we also had revolutionaries. You know what I mean? Like Lenin did a good job in Russia. And Mao did a good job in China. So people are like, yo, whoa, we could have a revolution. But it's like, you had the Haitian Revolution. You had how many African revolts? You had all this. You had the Maroons. You had this and so forth. Like, just go back in your tradition. You'll have the revolutionaries. And as far as what the economy has to look like afterward, if you read Marx, you'll see you cannot do socialism, Marxism, because you don't even have the advanced capitalism.
You don't have that development. That's a good point. And see, this is what I'm saying. So here's what I like to do. Oni has a Discord. I have one too. Oni is the Pan-African discussion, I think it is, and mine is the Bit of Medicine podcast. Anyone who's willing and able, man, let's come up with some, again, fundamental questions, fundamental definitions that we could get a panel going, a live stream going one day in the middle of the week, and we could attack this thing. Because again, I think our folks aren't understanding some of the fundamentals. It's like mathematics. If you don't understand arithmetic, you're not going to be good at calculus, right? You got to get the fundamentals and build your way up. I also like what Oni said at the end, and I think is important, and as well as what Forecast is saying in the chat. We have to name our shit. If you fly that banner of socialism, you are telling people who your ideological parent is. And if it ain't African, it ain't us, right? And I think we gotta get back to what we were doing. That's African, build upon it, improve it, but give it an African name. I've talked about this several times on here and different shows. There's a power in naming things. We got to get back to giving our defining and naming the concepts that we want to follow as well. Let me welcome in the Forecast this week. Forecast, how are you this week?
Yo, what's up, y'all? What's going on, everybody?
Yes, sir. Forecast, thanks for coming through. Forecast, you've been out there hearing the discussion. What say you to all this?
Yeah. And like Oni was saying, I'm not an expert on it, like on my brother Oni, but with Marxism, because we talk about this a few times, and you said, I mean, of course, it's European. Dude is a European. You calling it after a European. But the thing about what Karl Marx, even in what he said, he was like, we know that you need capitalism to start off, Marxism, and anybody who's like two, not generations, but two things behind, what I'm saying, they should probably be wiped off. And I don't know about this, like the trickle down society part of it. And I get what Oni is saying, and I definitely, like, you would find that, like, what he's saying, but I also don't think that you would run out of workers or whatever. But what I'm saying, I understand how it could be a problem, and I see what you're saying, because I disagree with some of the fundamental things. But yeah, like being in the position that we're still in the Stone Ages. What I'm saying, we're definitely not in the computer or the space age or none of that. So like we wouldn't have to worry about that at all. But I don't know where I just disagree. I disagree with certain parts of the ideology. What I'm saying, and then most of the Black Marxists, what I'm saying, they like selling their own books and stuff like this. So like they're actually like capitalists on the low. Then I heard them. I mean, like you also got to use the system that you're in to, like, what I'm saying, we getting money, like you have to work and put your resources together, and you can do stuff like with co-ops and have socialist programs. But like Oni said, we don't have, like, I think there was classes in Africa, but they have no like Rockefellers, what I'm saying? It wasn't that kind of classism as European issues were, what I'm saying? I don't think it's the same thing as European issues. I just think that when we start getting caught up into it, we just have a European frame of reference and a European mindset when we looking at and having these discussions. So I even try to stop saying capitalism and socialism and communism and all of that stuff. I just try to define it in different ways. So, but I'll pass the mic.
The forecast. I think that's the correct approach. But I think we have to start putting our stamp on things. It's no longer, we're not in the 60s anymore when Africa is being granted quote unquote independence, and they're still carrying on some of the ideologies of these folks. I think we're supposed to be in a new era. What was the brethren name in the chat earlier? By the way, shout out to Erica Howard. I heard her voice the other night on I think it was Brother Bakari's show or Forecast show. That sister was going through some health things. She's been on Shoot the Breeze panel before. Shout out to her. Shout out to Brother Bakari, who's out there saying peace and black power to the channel and the chat. And Jay is out there as well. Ben Uko is out there. I met him on Forecast's channel, I believe. Technology guy, black guy who's in technology, Ben Uko. So you guys check out everyone that you see talking here. And I'd like to invite all of you guys to the Discord. And not just mine, but to Oni's as well. Because I think the brain power that we have around here, yeah, it's nice if you guys come on the panel and talk about stuff. But we could have conversations during the week too. That's the thing that I kind of wish I invested a little bit more time in, is those conversations during the week. We can have that on the Discord, but I can't lead that all the time too, right? So join the Discord. Let's brainstorm some of these ideas. Nama X says he studies Kemet's system of economy and society. He says his next research or study is the West African Empire. Share some of that knowledge with us, man. You know what I mean? Jose says the subject socialism, communism shows again how language and education are tools to keep a flock. I will never argue with Americans about it. Okay. Is any last words from anyone on the panel before we move on to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2?
Yeah, cool. I do want to put up some possibly put up some PDFs on the Discord. So if someone could help me with that, that'd be great. And also, if anyone has the book, the PDF by Shakanta Diop on African pre-colonial African systems in terms of government, I can't remember the name of the book right now. If y'all could put that on the Discord, it'll be greatly appreciated by me.
Good. Yeah, there's a whole. I have so many books on PDF to put up. If anyone wants to help in organizing the Discord, I want to revamp it and stuff like that, make it more intuitive and a better place for folks to come and commune. We could have these discussions. We just gotta do it for Shoot the Breeze where we're limited on time per topic, but we could have those discussions during the week. And like Brother Bakari just said to Nama X, and I don't want to get into that whole thing I got into with Trigger Happy, but yeah, a lot of stuff, man. You should join the panel sometime. I remember they were inviting you up on Bakari's platform. I think it was on Friday when Buana and Bakari was talking sports. If there's no other thoughts.
Yeah. I guess again, I guess I just want to, again, when we say these words, like, we got to be careful not to synonymize. When we are all capitalists to some degree, because if again, the word capital means capit, it means like the word head. You use your senses. You add up things. I don't want to sit here and be senseless. I don't want to be senseless. I'm going to use my judgment. I'm going to make the best decision I can. And everyone should be able to have that sensibility, even without involving other people. Now, when you include other people, now one person, two people don't make a society. We're talking about, lots of people, and societies have something in common. It's like the societies are based on something. It's not just the people aren't just a society. You have knitting societies. You have you know what I'm saying? They say Dead Poets Society. Societies are based off of collective things. And in any group of people, you have different, occupations of people, and people do more than one occupation. Society is a multitude kind of a thing. It's not something that lends to definement, because again, I can be in 5 societies right now. But you all have one head. We all have our own conclusions that we draw. And I'm just saying that I don't want to synonymize capitalist with exploiter. I want to, you know what I'm saying? Although, you know, that's what winds up happening. When you wind up having $1 billion, $20 billion, you don't pay your people anything, and other people sit there and see that, yeah. And I mean that there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's like in a natural African you know, based society, anything like that will be cut short. You know what I'm saying? This like, yo, like you really like you. I look at that number. You know what I'm saying? Third party African says, man, we look at that party. We hear the grief. You need to lower them prices. And in African society, prices go up and down. But in these Western societies, prices always go up. These are the things that we just got to keep in mind, man. Because again, it's the notion that the value of things, you know, the price of something yesterday may be less because of the abundance and productivity of the people. That's just the way of looking at it. It does not necessarily mean a linear thing. I mean, that's what Western society does. And Western society, prices never go down. I swear, if African could have ever, like, you know, get his you know, supply chains and stuff like that, you'd have nice little prices going up and down. Capitalism, supply and demand works properly when it's not manipulated. That's all.
No, Real Black Gentleman, you made an excellent point there. In fact, from the little that I've paid attention to it, so to speak, it seems to me that in Africa we had both systems going at the same time, if I'm to be honest. But because of the bad taste that we have in our mouths when it comes to capitalism, we tend, and Oni and I talked about this on the show before, we said that we need to come up with a different name for capitalism, because we associate capitalism with oppression, right? But if you listen to, even if you listen to the Isoko man who used to be around here, shout out to Gas, you know, he'll tell you, like in traditional what they would call Nigeria today, people farmed, they shared, and whatever was surplus, they sold. So that tells me that there was a group of people who just decided, listen, I ain't doing no farming. Y'all will farm, and whatever y'all put the price as for those ground nuts and palm wine and all that stuff, I'll go and buy it from. I don't feel to do the work. I'll pay y'all for the surplus. And so it seems like we had a bit of both of those systems at one point. So that's a good point, Real Black Gentleman. Brother Bakari says, how about Gaviism? That's the economic plan for us. I think Gaviism is kind of what I just said too. I think it's a mix of both of those systems in a sense. I think it's enough to push innovation, although innovation has been shown not to be incentive-based so much as it is needs-based, right? A guy makes a carriage, right, because he realizes that he needs to be able to tote more stuff, and instead of throwing it on one horse and breaking his back, you know, let's build a carriage, for example, right? So I think a lot of it that we did before was needs based, but absolutely, I think Gaviism is probably the way, and it's a mix of the two things. Matron is here, saying greetings, everyone. Appreciate the matron for coming through. You guys are having a conversation about Mansa Musa. That's a good discussion. So anyone listen to the playback, pay attention to the chat. Was that everything from everyone on the panel on this one topic? If that's the case, let's go to Shooter Breeze topic number 2. Shooter Breeze topic number 2 is this in the subconscious mind of Black women? Is she speaking uncomfortable truth or self-hate? Of course. Just came with a link that's taking us to World Star. So you know we're in for a doozy here. I didn't know World Star was still around. I thought the guy died, and I thought that went belly up. So let's check out this video. And on the other side, as always, we will discuss it.
Every day I get online, me and I always complain about Black women, at least Black men. Black women this, Black women that. Our name just always in y'all mouth. Black women are submissive towards Black men, how white women are submissive to white men. Well, because the white man is the slave master. The rest of the people are the slaves. Why would I submit to a slave? I don't submit to no slave. I submit to my slave master, which is the white man. But I would never submit to no slave, which is the Black man. You supposed to submit just like me. Why would I be submissive towards you when you got somebody you need to be submissive towards too? Every day I get online, men are always complaining about black women, at least black men. Black women this, black women that. Our name just always in y'all mouth. Black women are submissive towards black men, how white women are submissive to white men. Well, because the white man is the slave master. The rest of the people are the slaves. Why would I submit to a slave? I don't submit to no slave. I submit to my slave master, which is the white man. But I would never submit to no slave, which is the black man. You supposed to submit just like me. Why would I be submissive towards you when you got somebody you need to be submissive towards too?
All right, like Ms. Erica Howard said, this is so embarrassing. Brother Bakari in the chat says she's an idiot. Forecast laughs at that. Afro Native World, I guess he puts up the red face droopy eye look emoji out there. Yeah, this is interesting. Just shoot the breeze topic number 2. Is this